All right, guys, Heybike has released two new folding full suspension e-bikes just this week. I just finished filming the Mars 3.0, and that one had a focus on power and speed. And this is the other half, the Ranger 3.0 Pro, with an emphasis on comfort and capability. Now that translates to a 1200 watt motor, 4-inch fat tires, its folding capability, and a claimed 90 miles of range. And all that sounds really good on paper, but how do those specs perform in the real world? Well, take a ride with me and let's find out on this review of the Heybike Ranger 3.0 Pro. All right, guys, now in terms of some basic overview about the new Ranger 3.0 Pro, this is UL 2271 and 2849 certified. Now it's priced at $13.99, and they say it weighs 75 pounds, but I put this one on the scale and it weighed right at about 77 pounds. That's with the battery and all the accessories you see on it. And then it comes in 4 colors. This is the emerald green, but there's also a ruby red, there's also a blue color, each of all the same kind of glossy, metallic, flake paint job that you see here. They're almost like car paint jobs. They look really nice. And then they have one limited edition paint job, which is called Miami Sunset. Just picture like Grand Theft Auto video game colors. They basically even mention that in their marketing material. It's a lot of purples, pinks, oranges, and yellows for a really kind of cool Miami Sunset vibe. Now they only made 200 of those, and that is an extra $100 for that paint job. But if you're in that area or you just really like that color combo, it's a really cool paint job. We might have some images up on the screen here for you to check out. Now, with that said, this comes in one size that fits a pretty wide range from 4'11" all the way up to 6'4". Now, the geo numbers for this frame are a 47-inch wheelbase, and that's going to be from the rear hub to front hub or vice versa. We have a 440-pound max payload, so a pretty hefty payload there. We have about a 14-inch standover height or step-over height. We also have about a 17-inch reach up top. And then you have about 8 inches of adjustability in the seat post. Now, with all of that said, this bike also comes with 20-inch by 4-inch wide wheel and tire combos. Now, the wheels are 20-inch wheels that have a offset spoke pattern for a kind of better grip to that tire. And then on top of that, the tires are a Kenda Crusade, kind of an all-terrain tire, 4 inches wide, so very capable, very beefy, but not super loud on the pavement. I thought they rolled really nicely. You do hear them a little bit at higher speeds, but it's nothing overbearing. They're kind of mild tread that will get you around off-road, but it doesn't make it some sort of like lifted truck annoying loudness on the road when it's just riding on pavement. Now, this bike also comes with just standard a rear rack that's rated for 100 pounds, which is a really nice rear rack. It's anodized or maybe powder coated, but it's a really nice finish on the rear rack. We also have fenders on both the rear and front wheel. They're plastic fenders. They have nice mounting points. They don't rattle or make any noise. And all in all, the rear rack and fenders are just really nice commuting perks. Now, on top of nice commuting perks, you also have one other really nice perk, which is front to back lighting. So headlight, tail light with brake light feature, as well as turn signals that blink on the corner amber sides of this rear tail light. So you've really got everything from some off-road capability with full suspension, all-terrain tires, 4 inches wide that are really grippy and get a lot of places. But then on top of that, you could still commute to work or school with this bike with the turn signals, fenders, rear rack to carry all the cargo. It's just a really nice setup bike. Plus it folds for smaller footprints, which I'll show you how that works in just a few minutes. But at the end of the day, plenty of ways to use this bike. Now, I will say one small miss by Heybike on here. All those mounting points, we got mounting points for a front basket, we have the rear rack, we have the fenders, all that's great. But on top of that, they didn't add a single water bottle cage mount, so none of those bottle cage bosses are on the frame. That seems like a small miss, but nonetheless, outside of that, you really are well equipped to do most anything as far as what this bike's able to do in your daily grind. All right, guys, so the muscle on this bike comes from the 750 watt rear hub motor. Now this peaks at 1200 watts and it puts out 80 Newton meters of torque. So pretty solid numbers and plenty of grunt for getting around town, even some mild hills, even some medium-sized hills. It just tackled really, really well. Now, is this something that if I went up a crazy 15%, big long hill, would it crush it? Maybe not, but I don't think most bikes are equipped to do that. This is equipped for getting around, but still having really good power for almost every just regular scenario you're going to encounter. Now, I would say if you live in a really steep area with really steep inclines and you're worried about that, check out the Mars 3.0 that was also released this week, because that one peaks at higher wattage and has higher torque. at 95 Newton meters and is more focused on power and speed, like I had said in the intro. But for everyday life and most folks in many areas, probably the most areas, this is going to be more than enough. And I thought it was plenty peppy and capable on its own. Now this does have a torque sensor for riding, so you get a natural pedal feel. And then on top of that, this has a companion app and a display advanced settings where you can really do a lot of things with the power. So you've got your standard riding modes of Eco, Tour, Standard, Turbo, all of those. But you can also go and adjust the throttle. The way it ships is, it's shipped as a class 2, but you can easily unlock it to class 3. It's not a crazy menu unlock. It's just a standard, go in there, look for the speed capabilities. And I'll show you how to do that in just a second. So there's no issues switching between class 1, 2, and 3, but you have the ability to do any of those, but it ships as a class 2. Now, this bike, when you throttle it the way it ships, the throttle will be limited to each level of pedal assist you're in. So say pedal assist 1 or eco mode is limited to 10 miles an hour, that's where the throttle will stop pushing. Or say PAS 5 or turbo mode is up at 28 miles an hour, then the throttle will take you to 28 miles an hour. But if you don't like that feature and you just want kind of unlimited throttle or throttle at a certain level and everything else to be separate from the pedal assist, you can do that in the app or in the display. It's very easy. You can also do motor tuning in the app where you can change how powerful each level of pedal assist is. You can max them all out or you can minimize them all. Totally up to you. It's your world with that app and those customizable settings. But I do appreciate that. It just allows you to kind of make the most out of this ride and do what you're comfortable with. Now, if the thought of an e-bike kind of makes you nervous in general and you're worried about being jumpy or too powerful or too quick, and your stability and are you ready, they also have a function in here where you can adjust the power and sensitivity of the speed and acceleration, as well as the sensitivity of the pedal assist, which really allows you to kind of dial things back if you want to and just start slow until you're ready to bump things up. Or if you feel super comfortable right out the gate, you can just bump all those up immediately and go crazy right out of the gate. So the options really are yours. It's just a matter of your comfort level and what you want out of your bike. Now the battery on here is a 48 volt battery. It's got 15 amp hours and it is 720 watt hours of power. Now the battery and the bike have a 2-year warranty. And like I said earlier in the intro, this bike's battery is UL 2271 certified. Now it does come with a set of keys that you can unlock the bike for storage or security purposes. And I'll show you how that comes off now. I'm just going to take the set of keys here on the drive side, turn it, and that will unlock this front portion of the battery and release it. And this is your 720 watt hour battery. Now, when it comes to range, they say this will get up to 90 miles. And being completely honest, that sounds really optimistic. And what I did is I went ahead and gave it kind of a torture test to just see what it could do when you're really maxing it out. And so on basically full throttle, going full speed the whole time, I was able to cover right at 30 miles or just a hair under 30 miles. Now, what that tells me is if I was using PAS levels 1, 2, and 3 and varying those as I went along my ride, like most people do, the thought of getting 50 to 60, maybe even 70 miles seems very realistic to me. 90, what they're advertising, seems a bit too optimistic, but let me know in the comments, maybe you've tested it or you're going to test it at that eco level for 10 hours and get those 90 miles. I just didn't have the time to go that far out and do it, but nonetheless, it's good to know that you definitely could get anywhere between 30 and probably 60 to 70 miles on this without breaking a sweat, which is really solid as well. Now to put this back in, you're simply gonna do it the opposite way you pulled it out. I'll just put the bottom in, and then I will let the top just kind of slide in, turn the key, and it's locked in place and good to go. Now, when it comes to the components on the Ranger 3.0 Pro, we had a couple bumps and specs that we'll go over here. Now, the previous version had a 7-speed drivetrain Shimano Tourney. This one's got an 8-speed drivetrain Shimano Altus. Now that is mated to a 13 to 32 tooth rear cassette and a 48 tooth front chainring. Now that combo gives you plenty of pedaling speeds, almost all the way up to 28 miles an hour, although at 28, those upper 20s, 26, 27, the pedaling gets a little bit more. You're gonna pedal a little bit more than you want to get that kind of feedback in the pedals. It starts to get into ghost pedaling territory, but it's not. It's actually, it does meet the whole range. It just gets a little loose up in the higher speeds, but most people at 28 miles an hour aren't pedaling. They're usually throttling at that point. Just something to keep in mind. Now, when it comes to the cranks, they're 170 millimeter alloy cranks, and they do have folding flat pedals on them for when you fold up the bike. Those pedals will kind of fold up into themselves as well, just to give you a little more room when you're folding the bike. Now, the braking on here has also been updated. We now have Tektro hydraulic disc brakes with 2 piston calipers, both front and rear, with 180 millimeter rotors front to back. This time around though, they went with a 2.3 millimeter thicker rotor than the standard 1.8 or even 2.0 that sometimes see. Instead, we went 2.3 millimeters. That's going to make the braking, the brake performance better cooled, and ultimately give longer life to the pads and the braking system overall, and just space out the time you're going to need to service them, which is ultimately just a money saver and more peace of mind for you. Now, when it comes to the saddle up here, this is where parts of the comfort factor for this bike really come in. This is a wide, super comfy saddle. It's got a quick release alloy seat post here that you can use for adjusting. And I never found that this saddle was too narrow that I found it to be sore and uncomfortable, but it's also not so wide that it's kind of awkward looking like some of those big platform seats you see on cruisers. This still looks like a bike saddle, but it feels like just a comfy chair you're sitting on. Really, really comfortable saddle. I kind of enjoyed riding the bike here with that saddle. Now up front, we do have front suspension. We have 65 millimeters on a coil spring here with preload and lockout features. I can lock this out if I don't want the spring to actuate, and I can open it back up if I want that suspension. And then the same thing in the rear, we have this air shock that also has adjustability with a PSI valve. You can adjust that as you go. All in all, between the two, it gives a little bit more cush, taking off the edge of speed bumps, things like that, imperfections in the road. It's not a full-on mountain bike suspension, but it's not meant to be. It's just meant to make this ride a little bit smoother and a little bit more comfortable, especially if you choose to go venture off-road and put those 4-inch all-terrain tires to work. Now up here in the front, we have our cable management. It all comes out into cable wraps and then down into the frame. Our handlebar and cockpit area here is a 25-inch wide alloy bar with a 31.8 millimeter bite in the center for the stem. That's another good point here, that this stem is also a quick release lever with some adjustability in it based on your height and your arm reach availability, how long your arms are, and how kind of comfortable you want that when you're riding the bike. That's where you can make those adjustments. Now we have a twist throttle on this right side. It's about a half twist for a full throttle usage. And then you have lock-on grips on both ends, as well as Tektro brake levers for your braking with motor cutoff sensors. And then we have a Shimano under the bar shifter on the right side. It's an 8-speed shifter with a window so you can see what gear you're in when you're riding. And then on the far right here, we have our turn signals, left, right, and then center is the off position, and an electric horn here as well. Now this right here is the TFT display, but let's take a closer look at the display and as well as the app and see what kind of things you can tune and what settings you can tweak to make this ride just more dialed in for you. All right, so when you power on the bike, you're gonna hold this center button. That's gonna give you the Heybike splash screen, and then it's gonna go to the locking screen. Now this is where you can create a custom 4-digit PIN code that's unique to you, and you can do that in the app or in the display settings. It ships though with a default 0000, so I could also use the NFC card that comes with it, which I could just wave in front of it, unlock it, but I'll just show you how to unlock it with the default code. You're just gonna tap this all 4 times for the 0000, and then one more to confirm it. That will power on the bike and allow you to use it or unlock it for security purposes. Now in the center, we've got our miles per hour in speed. We've got our outputs and wattage. We've got our odometer. Since it's been reset for this testing, it's at 9 miles right now. And then the battery up top is both a bar indicator and a percentage indicator. Now I will say, just a heads up, when you're riding this bike and you go throttling it around, when you go full throttle or full PAS, that battery bar will drop real quick to maybe 30, 50, 60%, and then jump right back up once you let off. So when you're putting a heavy load on it, it kind of gives a really overestimation of how much battery is left. And then when you let off and slow down, it gets back to a more normal one. It doesn't seem to affect the range overall, but it does affect, if you glance down while you're going 30 miles an hour, you might see this at 32 instead of 73. But then when you let go of the throttle, it jumps right back up to where it should be. Just something to keep in mind. Now, if we want to toggle some other information, we can tap the middle button here. We got average speed for this trip, max speed, odometer, trip meter, and current voltage and time. So I will go back to the standard information, which is the odometer. And now we can get into the advanced settings. So I'm going to hold the up and down buttons. That's going to take us to a 2-tab advanced menu setting. So we'll go through this first tab here, which is display settings, and then we'll bump over to basic settings and go through those. So first things first, you can toggle down. We get system units. If you want to change that to kilometers, you certainly could right there. Here we've got our brightness bars. It's at max brightness right now, but you can tone that down if you want to. This is how long the bike takes to shut off once you walk away, but if you wanted to extend that out, you could just push that button and toggle up a higher time if you want to. I'll just set it for 15, confirm it, and back out. Here is the auto lamp feature if you want the headlight to kick on based on ambient light outside. And then this is the battery indicator up top. It'll ask you if you want it in percentages or off, and then or voltage or percent. So I've been leaving it on percentage. I just prefer to see percentage on there. So I'll confirm that. Now, instead of backing out, I'm going to go up top here to basic settings. Now this is where we get into more of the speed and sensitivity settings. The first one is going to be the wheel setting on here. The next one's going to be battery voltage, which I don't mess with that. Here is where you get your low battery warning when it gets to 41 volts left on the battery charge. Here's where you can go into your password settings, and you can choose whether or not you have that password when you turn it on. You can make passwords for the settings menu, the basic settings menu, and the advanced settings password. Right now, as you saw, we just jumped right into them. There's no password, but if you didn't want someone messing with it, say you let your teenager ride your bike and you don't want them unlocking it to 30 miles an hour, then this is where you would set passwords for things like that. Now I will back out of here. And then the next one's going to be advanced settings. That's going to take us into those speed settings. So here we've got, you'll see a pretty silly number, 96 miles an hour, or 96 kilometers per hour. That's because I was just unlocking it as far as I could, pumping it up as far as the motor, the controller would let me, just to see if I could go 40 miles an hour, 50 miles an hour. I was never able to reach those speeds. The most I saw was around 29, occasionally tapping into 30 miles an hour, but it was still plenty fast. And one good thing about it is it feels very stable, even at those higher speeds, which I did like. Now here you can go and adjust the current levels, but I do not mess with that. Here you can turn on or off the auto cruise feature. If you wanted to have kind of a cruise control feature at a certain speed, you could set it. Here is the walking speed, which you can change as well. Excuse me, you can either have that on or off, not change. So let's go back into leaving that on. And then the assist levels, you can change between 3, 5, 9, and that's it. So 3, 5, and 9, you can have pedal assist, 1 through 5, 1 through 3, or 1 through 9. So we'll leave that on. This is how many poles in the motor are being read. You can change that if you want to. I've never changed that before. The starting mode is going to be how much power you have from the dead start. And if you went into here, you can do non-zero or 0. And that would basically be, if you have no speed, it would show you 0 miles an hour. And if you get speed, it'll go to 1, or vice versa. If you didn't want that, it would just say nothing until you start reaching a speed. Now, drive modes is going to be your class 1, 2, and 3 settings in here. I'm going to leave that on 2 because we have it basically at class 3. Pedal assist disc, that's going to be the magnets on the pedal assist sensor. Start sensitivity, this is where you can crank up or dial back how aggressive it is and how sensitive the pedal assist levels are while you're riding it. So if you're new to this and you want to be really careful, you could take it down to 1 through 5. And if you want it as punchy as possible, you could take it as high as 15. During my testing, I'll kind of bump all these up to see what they can do, dial them all back, see what they can do. That's why it was on 15. But let's just say, for the sake of an average rider, we'll just leave it kind of in the middle at 8. And then same here for strength. This is your initial launch speed, your initial power when you start going from a dead stop. This is where you can control how strong that is. If you go in here, you can go as high as 5 or as low as 0. I'm going to just leave it kind of in the middle of the road there at 3, and then you can back out. Now down here, you can go into all the factory settings and reset everything. I'm not going to go into that again. And here we have information like max speed, average speed. That's going to be for this ride. Trip 9 miles and odometer 9 miles. And so we'll back out of this. Oh, product line info. This is going to have all of your version information and the dates of the last versions that were entered, as well as the serial numbers and accessing the user manual, which is pretty cool. You can scan that QR code and take a look at that. So we'll go back out of here, and then that's going to take us to the rest of that. We can go to battery info. Here we can see just some basic battery capacity, cycle times, things like that, and the overall health. Remaining capacity, the temperature of the battery, and when it's full charge, the MAH it has. Here you can go back and you can back out again, and then you can finally back out of everything. So quite a few things you can adjust in here, everything from the power and sensitivity to kind of tweaking with the motor and voltage, which I don't recommend doing unless you know what you're doing, which I don't when it comes to stuff like that, so I leave those alone. But nonetheless, plenty of features in the display, and being a TFT display like this, it's got plenty of good contrast, even in direct sunlight. I never had a problem seeing it. And down here, you can see that cover open. That's a weatherproof cover that protects the USB charging port. So if you want to charge your phone while you're riding, you can certainly do that too. But now let me throw on my phone holder and we will show how the app works with this bike and what you can do in the Heybike app. All right, so this is the home screen on the Heybike app. It's been a pretty solid app. I haven't had a lot of issues with it, and it looks like it recently got an update because it appears different than the last time I reviewed a bike. but just the basics here. So if you tap the name of the bike up here, you can see that that's where you have your added bike, and you can add more if you want to. So say your family owns more than one Heybike, you could pair them all, and then depending on which bike you're riding, you could manage them through this one single app, which is nice. Not all brands offer that. Over here is the mileage since the reset. In the center is just a standard picture. They pop up with the bike when you pair it. Far right is going to let you slide to power off the bike. Over here is going to be letting you turn on your headlights if you want to, or turn them off. You can go into settings, and this is where you can do a lot of personalization. So right now you can change the bike to the color that we have. So right now we've got the emerald green, actually that's the blue. Here's the emerald green color. And then this is that Miami color I was telling you about earlier. So if you're into that, and that's what like a look you have, or you live in Miami, you want to kind of represent that, it's a really cool feature to get that extra paint job should you want it. But I'll leave it on the color we currently have right now. If you want to give your bike a silly name, you could go ahead and do that there by tagging that icon, and it would let you give it whatever name you wanted. Here you can go into personalization. This is where you can see things like top speed settings. Right now we have them in miles per hour, but you can toggle over to kilometers per hour. I'll put that back. Top speed is going to be 28 miles an hour max, but like I said, I did creep into the 29 and touch 30 every now and then when I was riding it at about 180 pounds on flat ground. Now, right now you can have a throttle limiter on, and if you did, it would tie it to the individual PAS levels. So at level 1, it'd be capped at 15, level 2 would be capped at 18, 22, 25, and 28, and so on. But you could also do it however you want. You could put this all the way, you could put all these, max them out as far as you can, and then have almost all your power at the high end, or you could dial everything back and get a much more reserved power profile. Just really whatever you want to do is what it's going to let you do. But I'll go ahead and leave that the way it is. I'll turn that off so I can just use the throttle however I want. And then here you can go into other settings. You have things like the backlight, how bright it is on the display. You can apply personalization settings, which will open up things like automatically applied when the bike is connected. So if you add certain profiles to when you ride it, that will apply that profile to the bike when you're on it. And then if someone else has a different profile in their app, the bike will use those profile features as well. So kind of a nice feature. You can also reset trip and default settings here. We'll back out of the speed settings, go into riders. This is basically going to say, do you want other people to be able to ride the bike? Put in their email here, and this will give them access to it. Here's over-the-air updates. This is a great feature for any e-bike because this is going to allow your bike to be maintained by the brand remotely. So if they decide, oh, we don't like the way the torque sensor is working, we've gotten feedback on it, we want to improve the programming, they can make those changes in their code and then push them out to this update where when you just tap this, it'll just say it's got the current version right now. But if there was something there to fix or improve, that's where you would see that feature. Now, if you wanted to delete this bike, say you sold it on the marketplace and you want to get rid of the app and you want to let the other person add it to their account, you could go in here and delete it. Now we'll back out and we'll go into ride. Now this is going to be GPS ride tracking. If you press play button there, it's just going to start tracking your ride, speed, distance, and all of that. Or if you're out and about, maybe you have some issues, maybe you want to swing by a bike shop and get, you know, your bike looked at, or you want to swing by a store, you can just put in wherever you want to go. So I'll put in, you know, bike shop, and it will list out the bike shops that are local. I could just hit go, and then that's going to ask me if I want to open up Apple Maps, Google Maps. I'll just say Apple Maps, and then you'll get your directions right there. And if you hit the start button, it'll start taking you there, but we're not going to do that right now. So I'll back out of this and back out of that, go to the store tab. This is just going to be where you can find local support closest to you that actually has agreements with Heybike in their kind of system for their service. And then over here on the right is going to be your personal profile. It just shows you how many bikes you have under your name, how many miles you rode with this version of the app and this bike combo. Account and security features, your stored rides, help from Heybike, and then going directly to Heybike themselves or back to the home screen. And then you have this chat button in the top right for any messages you might have received from Heybike about the bike. But nonetheless, very straightforward, but everything you would need to kind of customize it and personalize it and kind of own it, make it yours, but not a lot of extra fluff, which is nice. All in all, solid app, and it pairs well with the bike. All right, guys, we're out here on the Heybike Ranger, and this is the 3.0 Pro version, so it's kind of their latest and greatest. And you saw there's two models coming out this week. This is the comfort and just capability side. If you're going for speed and power, this one's got plenty in my opinion, but they have the Bars 3.0 that's going to be the beefiest, peppiest one. But this one's kind of for the everyday person who wants enough to get everything done, but has more of an interest in comfort, and that's where this one really shines. The seating position on here is very relaxed, casual. I'm just sitting straight up. My hands are kind of out in front of me, resting on the grips. And the saddle is very, very comfortable. I've probably already talked about it in the review so far, but it's just really comfortable saddle. So I've got this throttle unrestricted right now, or, you know, maxed out at 28 miles an hour. So let's see how fast we can get going on this flat section here. Bump it up to turbo, 3, 2, 1. And so on the display, we're at 25. 28. 29. I think I saw it touch. Sorry, there's a lot of wind out. So I had 29 tapping into 30 on my display side, but on my GPS speedometer app, it was at 28. So I think when I see it creeping up at that 29, 30, it's really just maxing out at 28 miles an hour. But let's see how it does on the hill up ahead. The hill up ahead is that little short punchy one, but it's actually fairly steep at 9%. Nothing ever looks like that on camera, but it is. So let's see if we lose any speed going up that, or how much we lose. I mean, there's plenty of power here. So I saw it drop a couple miles an hour. Nothing crazy, but let's go into the neighborhood. There's a longer, more sustained climb that's about somewhere in the 5 to 7% range, but it's more sustained, about a quarter mile in distance, not as short as that one, which will give us a better idea of how it does just throttling on you know, sustained climbs where you got a little bit of a hill in front of you. It's not something quick. And is it gonna beat up the bike? How's it gonna do as far as performance and power goes? So let's kind of just run it through this hill and see. So I'm just gonna floor it on the throttle and go all the way up this hill. If you look, the battery's dipping down to 20%, but when we're done and I let off the throttle, it'll go back to about somewhere in the 60s. I think that's where it was. So don't get freaked out when you see that. It's just because the motor's putting in a ton of work right now, and so the battery's getting taxed. The faster you go, the less efficient you are. I've been holding 24 miles an hour, and it's actually accelerating 24, 20.6, 25. This is the steepest section right here. And so we are losing about 1.5 miles per hour, maybe 2 miles per hour. But it looks like we're gonna hold over 20 miles an hour, kind of bouncing around there, 20.1, 20.9. All right, let's turn into here. This bike has turn signals too, which is nice. All right, so I'm gonna coast down this hill using no power, and we're gonna see how this battery meter behaves. Because I saw it go as low as 18% when we were on this hill. So let's go left, turn off my turn signal here, and then just coast. And we'll see what this battery goes to. So we're up, it's back up at 50%. It might be staying at 50% because we were in the 60s, but I basically throttled it for about a half mile uphill between the two of them. 52%. Either way, it came substantially back up. But now we're at 25 miles an hour. Let's see how these two-piston caliper brakes do with these beefed up 2.3 millimeter thick rotors. So I'll just stop at the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. So lots of good stopping power. I was able to stop really quickly, actually. And I had more room to squeeze, but I think I was getting into territory where I was getting close to locking up the rear wheel, which isn't really a big deal, but it's less efficient for stopping. You start to skid, and so the wheel stops, but the bike's not slowing down as quick as it should. One of the cooler things on here is you're able to program all of these speed limits based on pedal assist, or just give them, you know, open play. Just let them go as wide out as they can, or dial them all back. You can really just play with this to a style that you like. So we've got our turn signals here on this display, left, right, and in the center for off. What I don't see is the turn signal indicator on the display, which I like having them on there because it lets me know when I've left it on, because they don't auto off like in a car. But I definitely, just making sure I'm not missing it. No, the screen's plenty bright, it's just not there. So there's no turn signal indicator on the display. And then we have our electric horn, pretty standard there. And then our shifters, 1 through 8, with a display, which is nice. One thing I'll give it credit for, and let's do it again, let's take it up to speed. It feels very stable when you're at that max 28 miles an hour. Sometimes with a flat bar, it can feel a little wobbly. This feels very stable. Really like that. I'll tell you what, there's no shortage of power. I know the other one, the Mars 3.0, is the more powerful one, but this one's plenty powerful. 80 Newton meters of torque with 1200 peaking watts. I mean, there's plenty of power. I wouldn't feel like you're missing out if you don't go for the Mars, if you wanted this one for the comfort factor, because it still feels plenty powerful. It's gonna be a good bike for anything from daily errands, commuting to work and school, to taking it with you with your RV, going out to campgrounds, tooling around on the gravel roads and dirt roads around your campsite. It's just a really universal bike that has the muscle and the capability to just kind of get you around where you want to go. Now I can hear the tires, so there's a little bit of tire whine on the highway, not highway, on the paved path here. But it's not crazy loud, and I really don't hear the motor much at all. The motor's pretty quiet. I hear the tires more than I hear the motor. Now the good news about that is these tires are there should you decide to take the shortcut to work. Should you decide to go camping and bring this with you, you could go hit some dirt trails and still have traction and some teeth in the dirt for you to get around, versus commuter slicks that will of course be quieter, but they won't be nearly as capable. There's always a trade-off. Either way, fun bike, solid bike, and it's very stable. I like the speed, I like the power. I feel like they're not giving it enough credit for the power, saying the Mars is the powerful one. This one feels just as powerful. I mean, here I'm going 28 miles an hour on dirt road, gravel road. It feels perfectly smooth and fine. Just make sure I don't have any surprises on this path here. Send myself over the bars. All right, let's find a way back to the path here. There we go. You can feel that suspension working too. Mostly in the front, a little bit in the rear. I don't think there's a ton of actuation in the rear, but it's definitely nice having it. And on all those bumps, my voice wasn't jumping around or getting crazy. It's pretty smooth. I think a lot of that has to do with 4-inch wide fat tires. If you air them down a little bit, you can go as low as 5 PSI on these. They just do really good. And then you're right back up to speed. I mean, it's fast. Surprisingly fast. All right, so let's talk about some things about owning this bike that you may not pick up on just from looking at the website. Before you make your order, the last thing you want is to pay, a good bit of money for something. It arrives at the house, you see some feature about it, you're like, oh, I wish I'd have known it had that issue, or, well, that's a cool feature I didn't know it had. We'll kind of go over some of those things. Most of it's already been touched on in just the walkthrough of specs and components and the ride we went on, but I'll touch on some other things that haven't really been mentioned too much, but are worth just mentioning or mentioning again to reinforce it. First things first, the parts: Shimano drivetrain, Shimano cassette, chainring, the chain, the cranks, the pedals, all these drivetrain components that are going to basically make the bike a bicycle. If they ever have any problems, they need to be serviced or replaced. These are all things that are easily found at your local bike shop. Almost any bike shop in America is going to have something along this level, entry-level lineup of group set components to repair or replace what you have on this bike, should you ever get to that point. And there's no non-common, like proprietary, odd parts that we have to deal with, which is a nice feature for the drivetrain components on here. Now, another thing is we did get plastic fenders, and some people might think plastic fenders are cheaper. And while that may be true, plastic fenders tend to take a better job just taking on the daily beatings of life. So as you go through and this gets moved around and put in trucks and put in RVs and put in the garage and moved up and down, these bikes take hits from places here and there, and a plastic fender can be impacted. It might scuff, but it's not going to bend permanently like a metal one would. It's not going to rust. It's not going to rattle metallically like a metal one would. And it's a little bit lighter, I believe. That's kind of a guess, but I'm just assuming it's a little bit lighter than metal ones. They just last longer. They're easier to work with, and they just make more sense in my opinion, especially for a bike designed to go off-road a little bit. The last thing you want is some metal fender that's just going to rattle and ding and bend if you do hit it against something. Now, as well, we have both UL 2271 certifications on this battery, which is going to be the electrical components within that battery, the way it is housed and packaged. It meets certain safety standards on a third-party recognized level, kind of a big level, that UL certification. Brands have to pay quite a bit to get these bikes tested and evaluated to meet that certification. And it just shows that they're going and taking that extra mile to make these things meet the standards, so we don't see those headlines about, you know, e-bike battery fires, things like that. These are the type of certifications that give these bikes and their bike owners that peace of mind. Now, on top of that UL 2271 for the battery, it's also got UL 2849 for the entire bike electrical system, meaning, again, it just meets those certain safety standards, and it's not just something that they're pumping out and saying, you know, once you get it, you deal with it. This at least has that peace of mind that it's been evaluated by a third party who's not involved in the sale of this bike, and they said, okay, this is done safely, and that's a solid thing to know about the bike. And then finally, on the good parts, I'm going to touch on the brakes. Like I mentioned, Tektro hydraulic disc brakes, there's nothing not to like about those. But on top of that, they beefed up the thickness of the rotors from a 1.8 or a 2.0 like we've seen in the past, all the way up to a 2.3 thicker rotor. Now, why that matters to you is because it's going to improve the cooling of the braking system while you're using it, letting it cool quicker, not retain heat as much. But ultimately, that's not going to degrade the pads as quick. Less heat means longer life. So longer life on these pads will ultimately just mean it's a longer time before you got to service them or replace them down the road. And it just allows for the braking system to be more efficient overall. So solid job there. Now, some things I would just say you should be aware of before you buy a bike like this, like I do with every single bike. I'm going to start it off with one that seems to be kind of hit and miss common lately, but it matters on all bikes that have a chainstay here and a chain that can rattle on bumps, especially for a bike with full suspension, 4-inch wide all-terrain tires. They're saying to you, hey, you can take this bike off-road and have a little fun. But I'm saying to you, yes, you can have a little fun, but as that chain slaps, it's going to eat away at that pretty emerald green paint job, which I know nobody wants that. So go on Amazon, spend $1 or $2 or maybe $5, I don't know what they cost, and get some sort of piece of film or rubber bumper guard here. That's going to just make that chain stay and that paint and that finish last a whole lot longer and look good for the life of the bike. And it's a very inexpensive way for you to just help maintain the bike. It's like putting really nice floor mats in your car. Sure, it might have them, might not have them, but you can go buy cheap ones and it'll go a long way in protecting that floorboard of the car. Kind of same theory applies here, except for more importantly, this isn't carpeted like your interior is. This is metal and will scratch and rust and just look bad over time. So take care of it. Now, on top of that, another thing I would say you should be aware of is if you can see down here when it's on a rack. I didn't really notice this when I was on the bike or looking at it from like a standing point of view, looking down at the bike. But when you get it on a stand, you can see the exposed wires here. Now, on one hand, that's not that big of a deal. They're going to be exposed on almost every bike in some manner. But when they're on the bottom part here, the lowest point of the bike, they do have a little protector here, the stand for when you fold it, that does keep anything from, you know, laying the bike on rocks or things like that that's going to scratch up or maybe pinch these wires and damage them. But for a bike designed to go off-road, a bike where you don't know what kind of like ground clearance you're going to have going over things, and if you high center and you're rocking back and forth, the last thing you want to do is have a rock or some sort of log or something that's chewing and mushing on that cable and ultimately degrading the ability for communications and hydraulic fluids and things to flow through those cables. I just wouldn't want to see them damaged. I don't know that you will, but it's something to just keep in mind. If you own it, you don't want any unfortunate surprises, especially out on the trail where you may have something like that happen. Other than that, everything's been really well done on the bike. I didn't have any crazy issues, rattles, or sounds. I would like to give it a nod and, props for the fact that at 30 miles an hour, it still holds very stable and planted. It doesn't feel wobbly, especially with a flat bar. Sometimes they can feel a little wobbly up there at speed. And at speed, this one felt very planted, very solid, and just felt smooth, even going in those higher miles per hour. So with all of that said, that wraps up kind of the pros and cons from a mechanic standpoint. All in all, a well done bike. All right, guys, so I'm gonna do a quick folding demonstration just to show you how this works. Keep in mind, all folding bikes, they always advertise them as being super easy. I don't find any of them to be that easy. The reality is they're usually 70 pounds, or in this case, 75 pounds. And it's just kind of an awkward shape to fold, but nonetheless, I want to show you how it's done. So first things first, I'm going to collapse this telescoping stem here. And that's going to allow this to come down to the side. I'm going to fold up the pedals, both sides, and then unlock the latch that's on this drive side here. That will allow the frame to actually fold open. Just kidding. There it goes. And you can bring those two together a little bit closer with that folding pedal feature. Now, I would say I'd like them to add maybe some sort of strap here, because as you see, the tire wants to kind of fold back open, but it's nothing a quick bungee strap can't take care of at the house. But all in all, not super crazy to do, pretty quick getting it done. Now, the folded dimensions on this are 41 inches long, 20 inches wide, and 32 inches tall. So not very big, and definitely smaller than the original dimensions you had when you have it folded out. It's gonna be nice for people who are tight on space, or like I said earlier, travelers, campers, things like that. But all in all, super doable. Just the one word of caution I always give: if you are gonna pick these up, lift them and move them, just grab a second person. It can be easy to feel like you can do this quickly, but sometimes these can be a little bit difficult to deal with. So that's something to keep in mind. All right, guys, so there you have it, the new Heybike Ranger 3.0 Pro. This is their best version of the Ranger yet. And remember, this one is one of two bikes released just this week from Heybike, folder bikes, full suspensions. But the difference is the Mars 3.0 has that focus on power and speed. It's got a higher pushing wattage motor. It's also got more torque and a little bit more peppy speed when you're riding it. But this one was just as capable and a little bit more capable than I expected. It's still plenty quick and plenty powerful, but just remember, if you're focused on having the most powerful, the fastest, and you live in an area with the steepest hills, maybe check out that Mars 3.0. But for everybody else, I think this is going to be a solid option, especially at $13.99. You're getting a lot of good features here, like the torque sensor, 4-inch wide tires, front to back suspension, front to back lighting, and commuter features with turn signals. There's just a lot going on here that I think will make this bike a good fit for a lot of different people, whether you're an RVer and you're traveling and you want more room for storage so you can fold up your bike, or you're somebody who wants a bike that can fold up for moving it around, but you also want to be able to do a little bit of everything. That's where the Ranger 3.0 Pro really does shine. And with smart features like the NFC proximity card for unlocking and locking on the go, it's just got a lot of thoughtful features for a really great price at $13.99. Now, if I missed any features or specs that you want to know about the Ranger 3.0 Pro, drop them down in the comments and I will get back to you. And until the next review comes out, I'll see you guys out on the trail.